I'm Dylan.
I'm Kashiki.
And welcome to the dinner table. Today, for our second featured guest, we have journalist Dylan Baddour. He's done a lot of environmental work, and today that's what we're going to be talking about. So, Dylan, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, thank you all for having me. I'm Dylan Baddour. I write for Inside Climate News in Texas. I've been in Texas journalism for about 12 years, and a lot of stuff going on today. So glad to be here with y'all.
Hey.
So, as you said, you do a lot of environmental climate journalism. So tell us a little bit more about your work.
Well, there's a lot to cover here in Texas, as you probably know. My areas of focus have been oil and gas industry and a lot about water resources. So that in itself is, you could do a whole library on those things.
You really can.
Yeah. I report from the oil fields every now and then, the Permian Basin, the Eagle Ford Shale, and I go out to areas like Corpus Christi and Houston and pretty much any little town where I can find stories. The essence of my work is really getting out there and talking to people.
Well, it's wonderful. You said water, and I think that's what we're really focusing our episode today on, just because environment, so it's so vast, right? And a lot of people just don't really know about it, and it's so vast that a lot of people just kind of tune it out, right? And we were talking earlier, like I was doing research for this, and I started to go crazy because it was so much information and just so much to take in. So today we're going to be talking about water.
So I guess our first question is going to be where Texas gets majority of its water from.
Well, as you said, you read this and you get a bit crazy because of how complex it is. Because right off the bat, we're going to get all twisted here because you actually can't talk about Texas collectively with its water. You have to look at individual basins because a water supply is a local thing. So we can say where Houston gets its water from, Lake Livingston and Lake Houston and groundwater. We can say where Austin gets its water from, the Highland Lakes, Lake Travis, Inks Lake, and Lake Buchanan. We can say where Corpus Christi gets its water from, Lake Corpus Christi and the Choke Canyon Reservoir. So in general, we can say Texas gets its water from lakes and groundwater. Those are the two things. But, East Texas is water abundant. There's lots of water. West Texas and South Texas have water scarcity. So it's kind of a fallacy that many, many people use trying to talk about water planning on a statewide scale when it doesn't necessarily work like that. Texas itself is not going to run out of water because Houston is going to have water when San Antonio runs out.
Yeah, that was one, we were doing research, that was one of the, I think a lot of people have that confusion because it's Texas is running out of water, we're going to go into drought. But Texas is so vast, right? It's it's just, in general, the size is so big and we have so many different climates, so many different atmospheres. We have deserts and then we have like you said, East Texas, very green. And so besides where we get the water, what are the primary uses of this water? Because there's a lot of, as you said, South Texas is in a scarcity right now. So why?
Well, many reasons why. And everything in economics and resources, it comes down to supply and demand. And anywhere where we see water scarcity dawning, it's because demand is exceeding supply. So, demand has to be managed, and supply has to be developed. So you asked what is the largest use of water, and historically it is agriculture. Almost everywhere. Agriculture uses a tremendous amount of water because in days of water abundance, the tactic was drill a well and flood huge fields. We're talking about pumping tremendous quantities up from under the ground. And this has provided us with food. However, most agriculture in Texas does not directly provide us with food. Our biggest crop is cotton. So we've put a lot of water on cotton. And after that, it's hay and sorghum, which are livestock feed. Mm-hmm. So we put a tremendous amount of water on the ground to grow grass, which is then harvested as hay and sent to feedlots to fatten up beef cattle to be eaten. Sorghum, also, this is a grain that is primarily for livestock feed, and also, this was surprising to me, but high fructose corn syrup is made from sorghum. I don't know why corn is in there, but this is the biggest use of our water. And then after that, we go to industrial water users. In some places, water is important for cooling processes everywhere. Just like your cars run coolant through them. Maybe, if you've ever been like out of luck somewhere, your car overheated and you blew all your coolant out, you can put water in there for a short time. So power plants use a lot of water for cooling, whether coal or nuclear power plants, and chemical plants and refineries use water for cooling towers.
Data centers?
Data centers do, but however, data centers don't use as much water as people are depicting right now individually. However, when you get into the question of how many data centers we're looking at, yes, it is a large amount. However, like a mid-scale data center that I have looked at will use as much water in a year as a medium refinery uses in a day.
Very interesting. We will get to that for sure. I think one of the questions that I had when I was researching was for Corpus Christi, right? Like they're definitely in a crisis. They're in an emergency right now, and the water crisis that's happening is also impacting their oil and gas industry, as you've said, and that's a big deal because they are one of the biggest natural gas providers in the United States, right? Yes.
Exporters,
yeah. And so how does a water shortage impact natural gas?
So it won't impact natural gas that much because that particular facility is not a large volume water user. You're talking about Corpus Christi LNG. LNG being liquefied natural gas. So this is when we get the gas from the oil fields of Texas at the facility called Corpus Christi LNG. It's super compressed into a liquid at like minus 260 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it's loaded onto ships and exported. That facility, and I'm very well aware of the rankings of industrial facilities in Corpus Christi, how they use water, is not a big water user. And this is like the kind of intricacy and the level of complexity involved in water planning. So while that facility would not be tremendously impacted, it's more the refineries that produce gasoline for the state, refineries that produce jet fuel that go by pipeline to airports in Texas. Like the jet fuel goes by pipeline, meaning what's produced one day is burnt in an airplane the next day, and this going constantly. So if we have to shut down this production, it's not like we have reserves of jet fuel to run through. Our whole system is dependent on pulling this out of the refinery as it comes. And if we get to a point of a water shortage, then that means flights are grounded at DFW and at Austin.
No more flights grounded at DFW. We're both from the Dallas area, and I think they're trying to expand DFW to make it bigger. We don't want it to be bigger. No. It's already so massive and so irritating to get around.
Yeah, isn't this the story of all of Texas?
I mean, you can drive 10 hours and be in Texas.
Yeah.
What you explained with just how natural gas works and everything like that, I think that's kind of what, it took me a second to really wrap my mind around it, right? And so, and that's really my question though, because I've seen a lot of stories a lot of articles talking about the water shortage is going to impact these industries within Corpus Christi, and you're saying that they don't take up that much water, right?
Well, the LNG specifically does not.
Right.
The refineries do.
Yeah.
Like the LNG, I think uses maybe 300,000 gallons per day.
I definitely saw Valero in there and Exxon as well, but and so I know that I read about the residents of Corpus Christi having to cut down a lot of their water usage and kind of a divide between industry and residents. So talk to us about that, because you have covered it as well. So how is that going?
Well, yeah, residents have been under water restrictions for 2 years or more than 2 years now. They haven't been allowed to water their lawns, which doesn't sound very important, and it's not. But this is the biggest use of residential water consumption. We spray treated drinking water on the grass because we want it to be green and because we grow non-native grass varieties in our yards here. So since they've shaved that water use off, that's basically it. If you think about the ways you use water at home, showering, toilets, cooking, that's about it. And there's like not a heck of a lot that you can save there. Take shorter showers or don't let the water run when you brush your teeth. But when we compare this to that water usage at the big high volume water users, the refineries and chemical plants, that's where it is. That's where it needs to be reduced in the near future, and that presents much bigger problems because these are, very, very sophisticated, large pieces of machinery, multi-billion-dollar infrastructure. They were put there and built to turn a profit on a regular basis, on a daily basis, and up until now, they have not been under huge pressure to reduce that water use. The philosophy has been somewhat of like, this is so drastic, let's wait and see until we know for sure that we're on the cusp of disaster before we enact these serious cuts. And that's what is coming in September. So in short, until now, all the sacrifice has been on people. People don't have a tremendous amount of water to save, and what they do have, they've already saved. So looking into the future, we're getting to the much, much bigger guys who are now in line to start taking cuts.
In Corpus Christi in South Texas, they're trying to get funding to essentially take water from the Gulf and make it into drinking water. And so my question is why I feel like it's a stupid question, but why can't these big industries just use non-drinking water?
So because seawater is very salty, it's very corrosive to metals. So you need a much higher quality of metals to run seawater through it. If you've ever seen a car or anything metal that lives by the ocean, you see it get all rusted out real quickly. These facilities typically use what's called carbon steel, steel that is kind of reinforced with carbon. You need stainless steel if you want to run salt water through it. And if the refinery is already built, then there's no way to go back and replace all of the material that it's made with. Under certain drastic circumstances, like in the 80s, they did run certain cooling processes with seawater. But overall, the machinery is designed to use high purity water, almost at the level of what we would call drinking water or actually drinking water. So that was a good question to ask, but the time to ask that question was when they were building these things. Right. Now it's a bit too late.
And that's really, it just feels kind of hopeless, right? Because it's like you can't really do anything besides telling people to, I don't know, not shower.
It's looking increasingly likely that they get to that point where there's not enough water to meet everyone's demand, and at that point you start cutting people off, picking at first which businesses will suffer and maybe die. Later we get to communities and cities. What can we do? Well, like I said at the beginning, there's always two elements of this equation, supply and demand. So you can boost your supply or you can lower your demand. These are the two ways to do it. Boosting supply, they are urgently drilling emergency wells for groundwater to bring more water into the system. Now, obviously, if this was a sustainable, strategy, they would have done this 30 years ago. It's a stopgap for many reasons, and it's never going to provide the equivalent amount of waters they were taking out of those lakes. So that's supply. The other side is demand, which is also what we talked about. Start shutting down large industrial users. However, the problem we get to is that these large industrial users, Koch Industries, Exxon, Valero, are also the sponsors of our political system, are also the one who fund the campaigns for many of our leaders. and in fact are some of the biggest donors at the federal level. So if they have the ear of our leaders like that, and they really have that leverage, it seems unlikely that they are going to be the ones who are going to be asked to sacrifice. The disaster hits far before the reservoirs get to 0%. And let me give you a quote that is often cited in this discipline. It comes from Ernest Hemingway, The Sun Also Rises. It says, "How did you go broke? 2 ways, gradually, then suddenly." And we're in the gradually phase right now. This is what we've been watching for lots of time, but it doesn't go all the way until the reservoirs dry up. And I'll give you an example, talking about money, talking about your bank account. Your bank account is these reservoirs, and you've got a certain amount of money, and you have $1,000 in monthly expenses, and your expenses are greater than your income. So every month your bank account's going down. One month we come to a point where you have $900, but you have $1,000 in bills. At that moment, you're broke, you're bankrupt. The point where you can no longer meet all your bills, even if you have money in your account, there's nothing, you can't just start negotiating to pay less bills. You could have done that before. You could have been canceling your gym membership, canceling your subscriptions, but if you wait all the way to that moment, you can't do that. Now, the difference is that money is imaginary and water is real. You know, when you get to bankruptcy, there's bankruptcy court where you're forgiven for your debtors and you can financially restructure and get to another point. When we get to that point where there's not enough water to meet the demands, there's no way to just forgive that. People need the water, okay? And that brings me to another quote I like to give from Sam Houston, who said, "Whiskey is for drinking, water is for fighting." And what this means is that when we get down to the end of it, all rules are out the window. People don't just sit and listen to the rules when the water is gone, because we need this for life and basic viability. That means when water supply comes to that critical shortage, people start fighting.